Hey you, I spent so much time trying to get off the ground jumping my mountain bike, they called me Anti-Gravity Gary. I'm gonna show you how I stopped being a loamy loser and became the Sultan of Shred. They call me the Great Bermbino. Yes, that guy. That same wife, one wife, same kids, same paid-for minivan guy, David Davidson, two same names, double your pleasure on your mountain biking. And with this one revelation, with this spiritual download method, you're gonna jump so high, you're not even gonna have time to come down for family dinner, which is totally okay because your kids are at my house getting tutored in science, and trust me, they're acing it. My wife is like really good at teaching science, so they're in good hands. All right, so David Davidson here, co-founder Mountain Bike Academy, here to talk with you about the one humiliating mistake that I see most commonly with mountain bikers trying to jump on their mountain bike, and 3 drills, oh gosh, wow, 3 drills that you can use to fix it once and for all. Let's dive right in. Now, what is the big mistake that most riders make when they're jumping? It is very simple. It's there's a lot of very complicated coaching going on when I don't think it's what you need. What you need to hear is just the simplest thing that if you fix it, everything else falls into place. And that one thing is that we're getting compressed on the jump, okay? So what is this problem? Fundamentally, we either get scared or our body reacts in a way that's like, okay, I don't want to get launched over the top and crash, which that just makes you a smart person. It doesn't mean you're a wimp, okay? So I'm not picking on you. I'm with you there. I've been there before. We try to kind of go like this. We turtle shell in, and then what happens, you end up getting very passive and you absorb everything, and ultimately you run out of room to do this movement where you get closer to the bike. And then once you've run out, that's usually where the lip of the jump is, and it takes the back wheel, you'll see right here, and it just tips you forward. And what ends up happening is, sadly, you go over the bars. It can ruin your confidence, and honestly, like, it's one of the most devastating things potentially for your body because it exposes you to over the bars crashes through the air where it's just dangerous. Now, in order to achieve your riding dreams, we can counteract this bad habit or this bad result with 3 drills. The first one's called the standing spring. The second one is called a vectored lean, and the third one is called landing clean. Okay, so standing spring, vectored lean, and landing clean. Now, speaking of riding dreams, there's 10,000 mountain bikers who are on a mission to help shred with confidence and virtually eliminate crashes. And there's 40 million mountain bikers in the United States alone right now. So if you're here to crush your riding goals in 2024, I want you to go to the description below this video and on the main channel, and I want you to join our membership. You're going to get riding coaching, you're going to get community, you're going to get challenges, you're going to get personalized fitness, and it's all going to work together to help you achieve your goals. Click that link once you're done watching this video, and I'll see you on the inside. What we're going to do with the standing spring is we're going to start riding at a decent speed on flat ground. This is parking lot territory, okay? So do not take this to a jump and try it on a jump. Parking lot, field of grass, very safe, very controlled. Riding at a jogging or kind of a medium speed, I want you to stand up tall on the bike with your feet really where the weight of your body is, okay? So put your weight into your feet. Next thing we want to do is we want to drop the torso down first, and then once we've dropped it down a little bit, I want you to give a firm, absolutely violent press through the feet. So what this does is you're literally loading the springs of your bike. You're taking your kinetic energy of your downward movement and you're loading it into the front and the rear shock. So does this make sense so far why this is important? So what you're doing is you're loading this up, and what you should feel like is that there's a lot of pressure in your feet, okay? Now, there's a lot of coaching around this online. When you're jumping, you may feel some pressure in your hands. So keep in mind, while you're only feeling pressure in your feet here on this drill, you may feel some pressure in your hands or may feel some pulling in your hands while you're actually jumping. So try not to take it too literally. We're just training the body to do a standing spring, okay? Now, the first step, you've already done it. You've already loaded the suspension up. We've put all this kinetic energy into the front and the rear of the bike on flat ground. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to absorb this pressure. And so what I want you to do is use your legs to absorb the pressure. Repeat this 5 or 10 times and really get a feel for it. Why this is important is because I want you to feel the difference between absorbing that spring coming back and what we're going to do next, which is we're going to use that spring to bounce us up in the air with that rebound. Now, for this drill, you may find that the way your bike is set up is kind of important, and honestly, this is kind of entertainment. This is YouTube, and so what I'm not going to do is go into the exact settings that you need. What you can do, though, is talk to someone who's a really good mountain biker, who's a professional jumper, who knows how to set up suspension, and ask them, hey, is my bike set up properly so that I'm not going to get bucked over the bars if I do a jump? And check with them. And if they give you a setting that works for that, it's probably going to work for this drill too. So leaning in again, what we're going to do is, instead of absorbing like we did in the past few tries, what we're going to do is this body standing spring. We're going to take this standing spring, and what we're going to do is get it to bounce us up in the air. Now, some people call this a level lift or a bunny hop or an English hop, I think is possibly what this is called. And don't overthink it. All we're doing is we're using the torso, we're dropping it down, then we're violently pressing that spring through the feet, and we're loading the suspension up. Now, the next step is you want to increase the pressure in your feet as long as you can while you stay standing. And so what's going to happen is the bike is going to decompress, and it's going to rise up, and you want to keep and maintain that pressure in your feet during this time and allow it to push your torso back up in the air. Next, what's going to happen is you're going to reach a point where right here, there's no more kinetic energy coming through the shocks, and you've actually built momentum in the body. And the body's heavier than the bike. And so what's going to happen is that the entire unit of the body and the bike is going to go up in the air just a little bit. Now, the goal here is not to get 6 inches of air, a foot of air. In fact, if you're doing that, cool, but the point is you want to feel that little moment of weightlessness once your momentum has carried you up and the bike has pushed you in the air. This is critically important. What's so hilarious is that mountain bikers have been riding for 10 or 20 years and they can't do this move right here because they haven't taken the time to slow down and really check in on how their body's moving. Now, if this is a struggle for you, quite frankly, I want you to go and take those handlebars and stop your bike and set the bike down for just a minute. And let's practice some off-the-bike drills to get this body spring or this standing spring to work for us. So the first thing I want you to do is stand still, get in a riding stance, bend those knees, pretend you're on the bike, standing on flat ground, and I just want you to hop. And all you're going to do is just hop up off the ground. Do it once or twice and feel how there's that moment of weightlessness right here where you can get an inch or two off the ground and you're using your explosion from your knees and your hips to get you up into the ground. How does that feel? So once you can do this kind of off the bike, then it's really helpful to be able to do it on the bike. Now, I said in my last video where I talked about manuals, how incredibly athletically demanding manuals are. I actually don't think that jumping is quite that demanding until you start getting to jumps over 10 feet long, maybe 8 feet long. And the reason why is because jump technique on small jumps is we just need to use a standing spring. And quite frankly, it doesn't take a lot of effort to use kinetic energy when our legs are pretty straight and we're standing tall. It's just not that difficult. So the fact of the matter is that even if you aren't the most athletic, do not have the strongest hips, do not have the strongest legs, you frankly can get away with it pretty decently well here as long as your form and your technique is good. So let's focus on the form and the technique and leave some of the body stuff to some of the other episodes on the channel. Once you've gotten to a place where you can jump off the bike, get in the air a little bit, then what I want you to do is go back to the drill, see if you can achieve this level lift or this 2-level hop where you get maybe an inch or two off the ground. You just feel that weightlessness. Now the key is I want you to remember what it feels like to hold the torso and to use the legs to create that pressure from the torso down to the feet and to stand up on top of those feet. It's really, really important. Now, once you've done this, we need to move on to number 2, which is a vectored lean. A vectored lean is what we need to do to combine the standing spring with the shape of the jump and let the jump do the work for us. This is the opposite of what most riders try to do. They run at the jump at a very high speed, hoping to get over the jump, and then they compress a whole lot and get basically thrown over the front of the bike because they're working too hard and they're moving all over the place. We actually want to move very little on the actual jump. However, there's this new variable now, because when you're on flat ground, doing a standing spring is pretty much just up and down and you're really not moving that much. Now, we're actually doing the exact same movement, but because the ground is curving up, this is the launch or the takeoff of the jump. Because the jump is curving up, we've introduced upward movement, backwards rotation, and now the spring is getting compressed by the lip of the jump, not just our feet. So this is like 3 times the amount of things happening and 9 to 12 times the complexity of movement. So what we need to do is, instead of doing more stuff, leaning off the bars and pushing here and pulling there, all this bad advice doesn't do anything for us. What we need to do is we need to do the same thing we did on flat ground with a vectored lean. Okay, a vectored lean. So what is a vectored lean? A vector is where you take a force and you point it in a direction. In the last drill, what we did is we moved up and down. We would drop our torso down. We would extend the legs away from the torso to load the shocks. And then what we did is we stayed extended and we stayed standing up. And what it did is it pushed the entire system straight up. And we did this while we were moving directly forward. So the vectors involved on flat ground are up and down motion of the body and the bike, and then forward motion of the entire system, just because we're riding a bike, right? Let's take a look at a vectored lean. This is what a vectored lean looks like in practice. Now, the reason why a vectored lean is so important, and this is where so many riders are really, really losing a lot of confidence. A vectored lean is so important because how you take off on the jump is 99% of how you're going to land the jump. And the most important part about jumping is how you land. It doesn't matter if you pull the backflip if you land on your face. You know what I mean? So yeah, let's not land on our face. The most important part about a correct vectored lean, remember how I said that there are forces and then the direction of the force? Okay, cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to repeat the drill from the standing spring. And what we're going to do is we're just going to tilt it back perpendicular to the ground at all times. So when we're on flat ground, we're moving up and down. As the jump goes up, the perpendicular angle looks like this. And what we do is, instead of jumping up, we're kind of jumping up, but also kind of back. Now, how this may feel is you may feel kind of like you're hanging off the bars just a little bit. You may feel like you are getting pressed into the bars just a little bit. In that case, what you want to do is shift your hips back an inch or two. And all we're doing is we're just doing our standing spring in a direction perpendicular to the face of the jump at all times. How this will work for you, again, I want to be very clear. This works only for small jumps to maybe medium jumps with relatively mellow faces. A lot of the physics of what I'm talking about break down when the jumps become gigantic and when you're talking about very steep tombstone dirt jumps. So do not listen to me if you're going to go ride a BMX bike up a 13-foot face that's vertical. It's not the same. Let's talk a little bit more about this vectored lean. So this is where, with a vectored lean, this is just, honestly, it's a lot of practice. And then once you get it once, it's doing enough practice to keep your body remembering this move. Now, the problem I see with riders is they manage to do jumps and then they take time off of riding, and it's 3 to 6 months later and they hop back on the bike and they don't practice this at all. They don't remind their body this is what we're doing. And then they get on the jump and then they kind of forget everything and they go, oh man, I feel uncomfortable. It's like, okay, well, you need to practice this kind of thing because, again, while I said I don't really know if jumping is the most athletic and demanding thing, however, it's extremely demanding on your timing. It's extremely demanding on, is your form correct? Now, again, we're not doing very much with the body, and so we're effectively needing to have enough strength and mobility and flexibility to be in the right position at the right time. We're just not moving that much. However, you will be absolutely punished for mistakes. Jumping is not forgiving. So the reason why is because when riders come into a jump, you have about a bike length or two to do all of the things that you need to do to make the part in the air correct. And sometimes the jump in the air is 10, 20, 30 feet. And all of that depends on, the movement that you put into the bike at the moment you went off the jump. For every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. And an object in motion tends to stay in motion. And when we're in the air, there's really no way to stop the motion that we've created. So that's why it's so important with the vectored lean. And I've seen some people, you can practice this for an hour a week, 2 hours a week, and that's not too much practice. So with the vectored lean, the most important part is that you continue to stand up, that we're not compressing. If you can achieve a vectored lean without compressing, then a lot of your natural athleticism and talent will help take over, and you'll just kind of do it naturally. It's not that hard. So take it out to the trail, see if you can get some vectored leans done on some small jumps, see how it feels. Finally, we're going to talk about number 3, which is landing clean. Landing clean, again, it's 99% dependent on your vectored lean step. So if you start off the right way, then all you have to do for landing clean is just put your torso where it needs to be and scoop the feet or point the toes down and pull the bike up behind you as you stay chin over stem. That's it. It's not complicated. So this drill right here, again, it's what you want to do once you've achieved the first 2 drills and you're already in the air. So once you're in the air, it's as simple as this right here. You just basically look at, okay, cool, well, let me get the front and the back tire to land at the same time, and you adjust the attitude of the tires by lifting up on the pedals and just kind of holding the torso where it is and relax. It's not that hard. With this one, again, it's helpful to point both toes down and bring the bike up to you. And just don't be afraid, because it can get a little scary to point the bike down when you're in the air. Okay, now let's talk about some common mistakes. And this is actually one that I used to struggle with quite a bit with jumping. And the first mistake is to punch forward in the air. And this is usually a result of someone who had a lot of bad habits jumping when they were younger, like me, where you would just figure it out. In midair, you had to punch your hands forward to clear the back tire over the lip. Now, the crazy thing is that if you don't do this, it's actually easier for you and you'll probably still clear the jump. If what you do is you stay chin over stem and lift the back tire up. And what this does, it's so much safer to land front tire forward or front tire first on a smaller medium jump. So what we don't want to do is we want to avoid punching the hands out to clear the back tire over the jump. It takes more work, it's less controlled, and because we move forward, now we need to move back over center once we land, and it can cause some problems with our landing. So what you want to do instead is stay chin over stem at all times, and then bring the back tire up to you by pulling on the bike with your toes down, and that'll help you a lot. This one's a hard one to break if you've already got the habit. The second mistake I see is landing back tire first. We want to avoid this because physics, if you land with the back tire down and you're going one direction and the bike's going another, you're going to smash on your face and it's going to hurt. So landing with the front tire first, ever so slightly, or both tires at the same time is actually the safest, most reliable way to land. Again, go back to number 3, landing clean, and take a look at that to make sure that you learn how to do it the right way. Yeah, and the final mistake that I see a lot of times is when riders are going off the takeoff, they get really far back over the bike. And while this may seem like a safer position, it absolutely breaks down the physics of what makes it safe for you to jump in the first place. So remember in the standing spring, how we're standing tall and we're using the torso and the feet to press into the suspension. What this does is it creates a counterforce that pushes back up on us. And when it pushes back up on us, it sends us up in the air in a predictable fashion. When we get really far behind the bike and just do the tug of war position where our backside is hanging over the back tire, the physics of this mean that all the upward force on the back tire are absolutely going through an already bent knee. When your knees are bent and when you're at an angle like this, the forces have a really easy time compressing us, which again is the number one mistake that I see riders making. So if you want to avoid that compression, make sure you're standing tall and you're literally standing up tall going into the jump. All right, so go take this out to the trail. Let me know how it helps you, and I'll see you on the next episode. Peace.